Alrighty, hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue to We Are Open for Climate Justice as we do a live walkthrough of Fourth Space with Jeffrey Little, Associate University Librarian Director of Concordia University Press. We are so pleased that you could join us in person or virtually for this walkthrough of the space. Just to situate you very quickly, we are streaming on YouTube Live from Concordia University's Fourth Space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. At Fourth Space, we collaborate with our university community to activate the many research projects and initiatives that are in development across the university at any one time by co-creating engaging activities. So to that end, we are so pleased to have the opportunity to work with our colleagues in the library here at Concordia to make this moment possible. Now, to get us started, I'll pass it over to you, Jeffrey, and I believe you'll be speaking to Rachel Harris. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Anna. First, I want to say welcome, everyone. I'm sorry, I need to unmute myself. Apologies for that. Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone. First, I want to say a big thanks to the Fourth Space team, to Anna, to Doug, to Jax, and for everyone who's come out to participate in Open for Climate Justice, a really engaging, interactive fair in Fourth Space. So thank you again. I'm really grateful to everyone who's come out, especially grateful to my colleague Rachel Harris, who is a scholarly publishing librarian at Concordia University Library, and really the moving spirit and organizer of this event, and put together so many fabulous booths. And I'm going to ask her to talk to us about what she's brought to display and about open access initiatives at the library.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for that generous introduction. And thank you, everyone, for coming and for all of the booths. Everything looks wonderful. So our booth is Climate Justice Content Finder, and it's a collaboration with Sarah, if you want to name your role.
I'm the OER Outreach Assistant.
Alex?
I'm the Data Services Librarian.
And
I'm a student librarian.
So a big team involved here. And so the idea is about finding climate justice related content that is open. So this booth is a window into being able to do that. On our screen here, Sarah has created a overview video of the different kinds of open access resources and services available at Concordia. And then we have individual demo videos, such as finding open educational resources, finding climate justice kind of content in open educational resources. These are resources that are not behind a paywall, so that students, for example, can access this within their degrees or after when they're done their degrees, for example. And then the open data video Alex has generously created. And then we also have a Spectrum demo video. So there's climate justice content available on Spectrum, our institutional repository. And in Spectrum, if you do some exploring, you can see that any given thesis or article, because there's both in Spectrum, will lead you into Core, which aggregates research that is open in repositories and journals. So it shows you related searches. And then there's an opportunity for you to try a search for either open data, open educational resources, open access articles, and get a button.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I want to give, again, another shout out to Rachel for all her work in this regard. I think Concordia has been a leader in open access in Quebec. And I'm going to unmute myself so you can hear what I'm saying. But just to recap, thanking Rachel for all her work, and to emphasize that Concordia has been a leader in open educational resources in this province. And we have a great program that has been off the ground for almost 2 years now, and is really doing really excellent work in terms of tackling the affordability crisis in education. So thanks very much, Rachel. I'm going to wander over this way to my colleagues at Concordia University Press, to Ryan Van Housty, and to Meredith Carruthers. And I'm going to include Salen in this grouping here as well, whether he wants it or not. So many of you know about the press already. We were started in 2016, so we're Canada's youngest and fastest growing press. And I think we are small but mighty. I'm going to ask my colleagues to talk about their work and to talk about the ways in which Concordia is sharing new scholarship with the world.
Hi, so I'm Ryan Van Hoosty, and I'm the acquisitions editor at Concordia University Press. I would say that Concordia University Press is a not-for-profit open access university press. This is a key thing to signal on Open Access Week. So in addition to producing print editions of our books, which you can see all of our extant ones, there are a couple that are coming out next week that I will shamelessly promote as well. We also produce free digital open access editions, and for many of them, we're using the Manifold platform, which I have displayed behind me, which is hosted kindly by the Concordia University Library. So we have this resource where the books themselves are available as EPUB 3 versions and some as PDFs, so that the EPUB 3 versions that are hosted through Manifold have additional accessibility features. You can sort of resize the text, change the background color. They're often more compatible with particular kinds of online readers for those with auditory or visual impairments. And I would say that it's really cool to be at this event today with all of these examples of various forms of scholarship that are not necessarily just from the conventional scholarly publisher. And I want to shamelessly plug and promote an event that we're having on Thursday for Alex Ketchum's Engage in Public Scholarship, which addresses lots of strategies for working on these kinds of extra or ancillary kinds of scholarly outreach of findings. We're having a fireside chat at 4:30 on Thursday here at Fourth Space. So in addition to the OA Week theme of Open for Climate Justice, I think it's kind of important also to signal that there are ways that publishers can try to reduce their carbon footprint, and often that is through ecological choices in the materials. So I want Meredith to mention a bit about eco paper, and she has samples for us.
Hello, Meredith Carruthers. I deal with production for Concordia University Press. As Ryan mentioned, we have all of our books open access in time on our Manifold platform. So for those of you that maybe are tuning in from home, you can take a look at the Concordia University Press website, and you'll find links to all of our open access content there as well, from downloadable PDFs or to interactive EPUB content. Well, if for those of you who are here today, you can come by and take a look at some of our samples from Roland Paper, which is a paper mill in St. Jerome. It's a paper mill we work with quite often. So although we're doing print publications, we also try and look at the sustainable issues around print publication. St. Jerome is working on innovation in paper recycling. So rather than going to forest sustainable sources, which they do as well, they also are looking at new ways to be able to recycle paper waste, even those that have plastic coatings. So they have an amazing process where they're also working with biogas from their own process to then fuel their paper-making facility. So we're trying to work kind of locally with St. Jerome Paper, print locally when possible, and also count on our open access content to get the work of scholars into people's hands and minds. So pass this back to Jeffrey.
Meredith, do you want to say anything more about Manifold?
Sure. Is it? Yeah, I can speak to Manifold. So please do come by and take a look at what we have here on the screen for Manifold. So Manifold is it's a platform that was developed by Minnesota University Press in collaboration with Cast Iron Coating and the University in New York. This is an interesting platform that's also a community of publishers. So we were involved since 2018, where we were part of a pilot program to bring that platform to new audiences. I believe we were the first French language publication to come out through Manifold with a translation project that you can see also in paper here. And it's an amazing platform for being able to interact with content and to work with accessibility. So anyone who's reading on the Manifold platform can adjust the size of the type, can choose how to engage with it with an audio reader so that you can hear the content. It also has annotation features. So if you have a course adoption, you can share it with a group and then directly engage with the content. So it's an exciting platform going forward, and it's an exciting community to be part of. It's not only open access, it's also open source. So with our colleagues here at the library, we've been working with anything from debugging that platform to also hosting the content here ourselves and putting that content out with our publics.
Great, thanks very much, Meredith. I also want to give Salen a shout out again. He's been with us for over a year now, and we've really benefited from his help and from the help of other student librarians. So he's been great, and also Meredith has been doing a lot of important work with the Manifold team. So I want to give her the praise that she deserves for all her work in that, and really keeping the open access mandate really front of mind. I'm going to come and talk to my colleagues in the Open Science Working Group, and Nicholas, hi, and Madison, hello, and ask them to tell us about their work and their display today.
Hi, and thank you very much. So maybe I will start by providing some context to the Open Science Working Group, and I would like to pose like a kind of rhetorical question, right? So how do we access research, and how do we know what research teams are usually doing? And if you think about that for a second, you will notice that we do that through articles and conference proceedings mainly. And we have a problem with that because the vast majority of these articles are paywalled. What that means is that people has to pay a fee to access the articles, and this is problematic in itself. But also when people have access to the articles, there are certain materials that remain unavailable. For example, the instruments that were used for a particular study, or the raw data that was used, the code that was used to analyze that data. So this is an issue. Open science is a solution to these problems because it's a way of conducting research in which all the processes and products of scientific discovery are available and accessible to all without barriers. So at the beginning of the year, with Dr. Krista Byers-Heinlein, who is a professor of psychology, and also she's the director of the Concordia Infant Research Lab and the Concordia Research Chair in Bilingualism and Open Science, we started to think about open science at Concordia, and we really wanted to know which was the state of development of an open science culture at the university. So we held meetings with several people, and we identified pockets of open science here and there, but there was no central location for people to really get together and discuss open science. In May, we organized the Open Science at Concordia conference that was very successful in gathering people to showcase how they were implementing open science practices in different departments, different faculties, and that was phenomenal because that allowed us to come together, you know. And it was right after the conference that we agreed that we needed a group, a working group. And that's how the Open Science Working Group was created. And the Open Science Working Group now gathers more than 20 faculty and trainees from different faculties and departments. And our aim is really to foster an open science culture at Concordia, and also to explore solutions to practically implement open science in everyday workflows. And me, myself, I'm a Horizon postdoctoral fellow specializing in open science in infant research. So this is very exciting for me, but I can notice that it's also very exciting for other people that are coming to open science from different backgrounds, different disciplines, right? So maybe Madison can speak a little about psychology and why this is important, for example, in psychology.
Yes, so in psychology, there's a crisis with replicability of studies that we once thought were the groundbreaking true studies, and we can't find data that always is reproducible. So by having open data sets where we can collect data from all across the world, this gives us the ability to analyze larger data sets that are more powerful and can be more telling in what is really going on behind all of this.
Yeah, and that's also important, for example, for diversity, right? Because we can have more diverse samples and we can share the results so that other people can build on those results, right? The idea is that research has been largely siloed, and we now want these silos to be opened up. And this is what Open Science is doing. And this is also very important in the context of some policies that are coming into play. Here in Canada, both the federal and provincial governments are implementing incrementally open science mandates, right, and mandating the implementation of open science practices. So I think that for all researchers, it's important to become aware of the processes and of open science and the practices that open science entails, so that they can be ahead of the curve when the time comes to implement them in the daily workflows. So the Open Science Working Group is writing reports with recommendations that will be shared with the administration or implemented directly where possible. And we are welcoming, we are inviting everybody to come to the group. We would be delighted to welcome you all at any stage of the career development to come and contribute to the group. We'll be very happy to have everybody join us.
So,
thank you very much. Yeah.
You're welcome. So I know you're still writing a report, but in terms of best practices, you mentioned that you're thinking about some best practices. So it can really range, right? You can try and fulfill every requirement, every mandate, to be really studious and regimented. Some people are more comfortable with fulfilling some requirements than others. But what are some easy best practices that people can think about in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I would say that there are many practices that open science entails. For example, pre-registering a study, right? Pre-registering a study is saying in advance of the study what you're going to do with the data you have. For example, you have to pre-register the analysis you're going to conduct, the hypothesis you have in advance of the study. So this is a good practice that I would say is a good practice for a beginner. Maybe open access too, publishing open access. Whenever you have the chance to publish your work, choose an open access journal. There are many journals that have expensive APCs, unfortunately, article processing charges, and that's unfortunate. But there are also many diamond open access journals that don't charge a fee, and it's good to publish research there. So that's another good practice for beginners to open science. But there are many others that are more costly. For example, data management plans or open data. There might be concerns related to data, right? For example, I have data with videos of infants. Can I share the data? Well, no, you can't. So we should talk more about ethical concerns and how to implement open data in each specific discipline and each specific project.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. And we are welcoming everybody to come here to the booth today. We brought an open science trivia so that everybody can test their knowledge of scientific practices and, yes, become more acquainted with open science.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Madison. I'm going to go around this way to my colleagues at Citizen Science. I'm going to take a pass over here. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Tell us about your group and your project, and it looks fantastic.
So we're the Citizen Science booth. In recent years, so in the last 20 years, more and more people, like everyday citizens, have been able to contribute to the scientific community by uploading images or just data. So the largest site is iNaturalist. So that's what we're showing today. We're showing the applications that you can do with iNaturalist. Where what that is, you know, let's say you're on a hike or you find something cool. You're like, all right, what is this? So you can take out your phone, you can take a picture, So we've got a couple leaves if you want to download the app, test it out. And then what the app will do is it's going to push you in a general direction. So it's going to say, from this image, we think it's probably in the oak family. If it's, let's say, like an oak leaf. And what this does is you can start making a map of all the different distributions of species over time. So, throughout the year and throughout the years. So you can see, is this species range expanding? Is it shrinking? So for something like birds in the island, we'll see that people individually uploaded pictures of birds, but that gives us a robust data set of birds on the island of Montreal. And something that, and like how we actually use this is ecologists and biologists can start making Excel spreadsheets, with data. So in this case, we counted clumps of caterpillars. It takes a while, but with enough images, we can get a robust enough data set that it offsets any of the like negatives of just having random images. But like for this species of caterpillars, we found that they don't really cluster together because they just don't, or at least that's what like the uploaded data suggests.
It seems, based on what I'm seeing on the screen, you've done some work on Sir George, and you've done some work on Loyola as well.
Yeah, but that's my colleague Jackie's work.
Yeah, I can talk about that. I recently started working at Concordia in facilities management as the urban agriculture and biodiversity coordinator. And so one of the big things they asked me to do is like increase the biodiversity, of course, right? So I was like, amazing, great opportunity. Where's the baseline data? We don't have a lot yet, because what we have is like research students or professors who have like taken that on as their work and started cataloging it, but there's like so much work to be done. And so in speaking with the biology professors, Concordia signed up for the Campus Biodiversity Network that's on iNaturalist. So now anybody on the campuses can add their data into iNaturalist, and then I work with the biology professors to then make recommendations to the university. How do we make sure that our pollinator species are actually attracting pollinators, and how do we make sure that the work that we're doing is increasing it? So it's just, we've been on for just about a month now, a part of this network, and like already we're having like pretty decent numbers of people participating. This is like the first announcement of this. So yeah, like from the like policy or like putting into action side, it just makes everything move so much faster, because you have all these citizens collecting the data, just doing what we do. We take pictures of everything all the time, and then scientists behind the scenes. So yeah, it's been a great resource for us.
So it sounds like this is a celebratory moment. It seems like the soft launch of the university's participation in iNaturalist. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Based on a month's worth of data, are you seeing any trends? Are you noticing anything? Are your assumptions being authenticated, or?
Well, yeah. Well, what we're seeing is so far like what you would kind of expect to see. We have on the downtown campus, we can only grow a few species of trees because of the salt content, and so, or there's only a few that are growing. So what we can do then is to try and diversify it again, work with the biologists and see what other species can we try to implement down here. We realize that we don't have very many pollinators, and they're not that attracted to the vegetable gardens. Like that's one of the things. We've been good in urban agriculture at Concordia for quite a while, but the vegetable gardens aren't attracting any pollinators, and we need to feed the pollinators to feed the vegetable gardens. So we're getting information like to lead us down the path of how to actually make it a more diverse campus.
Wow. And anything about Loyola? Any thoughts?
Loyola is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're seeing for the Loyola campus. Where there's missed opportunities, like a lot of the grasses that are out there aren't doing much to attract. What we do see is like cedar hedges are providing a lot of habitat for birds and different insects, and that's a super easy plant that we know we can grow. Yeah, we're starting to have groundhog population coming back in just like in areas where we haven't mowed the grass as often. So we're seeing that some of these small changes we've already implemented are starting to work.
That is really fantastic, and it seems like with Concordia, you've got two kinds of environments, one that is incredibly urban and where space is at a premium, and another that is greenier and leafier, and I think we make assumptions about both, but it's great to have this kind of data. And so you work with faculty as well as with students and bringing this together.
I'm sort of like in a bridge position where I'm exactly working with faculty, students, and with facilities management and the groundskeeping crew.
No, amazing, that's great, wonderful, thanks. And so anyone can participate in this by?
Anyone. Yes.
Yes. Can you describe just opportunities? I guess you've got some QR codes, but also an app.
So the QR codes are just to help people that don't want to type in iNaturalist on the App Store. It's, you know, you just scan it.
It's hard to type in iNaturalist.
Press a button, but I mean, sometimes it's fun. You know, you just press a button and then go. But it's more about going outside and taking pictures of things because it's fairly straightforward. We have a video that shows you how to do it, and it's really, you go outside, take a picture of something, and then you upload it, and the image is going to know where it was taken, when it was taken, and then it inputs a lot of general data that's really useful for scientists on the back end. But really, it's the fun part of it is it's kind of like an extra little reason to go outside. And like the core of science is, you know, you ask a question and you want to try to find an answer for it. So go outside, look for something that, I don't actually know what that is. Take a picture because somebody probably knows what it is, and somebody's pretty interested in knowing what it is. So on iNaturalist, we're even discovering new species. Not discovering, but like sometimes, you know, somebody uploads an image and it's like, oh wow, this snail species was described in the 1800s, but this is the first actual image of that snail. So, you know, you never know if you're going to be the first person to take an image of a snail. It's like, oh, look, my hand is famous.
Amazing. So I don't know if we can get this on camera, maybe not, but can you demo? Can you demo the app on your sample materials?
Yeah, sure. So
We ran out of batteries.
So what we have here is a very large leaf. What type of leaf is it? I don't know anything about trees. We're going to take a picture here.
So yeah, it's as simple as just take a photo.
For those of you that can't see what's happening, a photo is just taken. Then the app's just like kind of looking at it, analyzing it. And then it's going to give us a general guess as to what that leaf was. And if, you know, we kind of know where it is, we can point the app in the general direction, and then you just hit the check mark and it uploads it.
That's amazing. Wow.
So it's very simple. You can upload something in about 10 seconds.
And it's doing trees, snails, birds.
Yeah, anything. Birds are actually really fun because there aren't that many birds compared to like insects. So there's a good chance that the app is just going to be able to go like, oh, it's this bird. So it's a great way to get into birding. There are a lot of citizen science birding resources. There's eBird and Merlin, but iNaturalist works for those too.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks very much. So I'm going to speak to colleagues again in the library. And Francisco has moved away from the group, but I'm going to, okay. My colleague Josh and my colleague David, and they're going to talk to us about the SEER platform software that they've developed. This is a really exciting project because it's utilizing a lot of skill that exists in the library in terms of librarianship and the ability to find and synthesize information, but also skills in visualization and how to visualize data and complex ideas. So David, Josh, tell us about SEER and what it can reveal unto us.
Maybe I'm going to let Josh start with a librarian perspective. Kind of.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, the idea here is that, you know, of course, people in their everyday lives can make use of open access resources, but it's not always clear how to do that. And the thing is that within a university, you have students that as they leave the university, lose access to all kinds of important resources that they normally have through the library. And as a library, oftentimes during Open Access Week, we'll be talking to other faculty or students about open access and all the benefits that it can have, but it's within an academic context. And so we really wanted to show how outside of the academic context, whether you're in some other kind of career or you're no longer a student, you can still get really good quality information and it's free to you. And so that's really what we hope this can highlight. So in an effort to do that, we assembled this, this application, SEER, which I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen or not, but it's a touchscreen application. And it's really supposed to be kind of fun and playful. So you can come to this with a question, and it gives you this sort of mystical divination sense of what possible answers to that question are. So all of those answers are facts that come from different open access articles, databases, or other types of resources. And as the user plays around with these facts, they learn information about the possibly answering their question, but also about the license that was used to make it open access and how to actually get access to the source. So if they want to read the full article or see the data set, they're able to go to it. Yeah, and so hopefully it should be playful in that, and this is the kind of experience that my colleagues David and Francisco have really put a lot of effort into designing here. Would you like to add to that? Sure.
Yeah, it was a really fun experiment to think about how to approach and engage and sort of get this message across in a more playful context. So that was really the idea behind using the concept of divination in the sense that you have different these different facts that are tied to open access resources, but you might read the facts and kind of take a different reading and come up with a different answer to that. So there's a few different ideas baked into the platform, but really it's just kind of a way of perhaps trying to highlight this and get the message across in a more playful context using some sort of ideas borrowed from gamification and such.
Just also in the spirit of Open Access Week, all of the content in this is available, easy to find on a Zotero group that anybody can access, and the code for it will be available on a GitHub repository. So if you come on the library's website, you look at the research page for open access, you'll be able to find the SEER project, and from there you can go and find more information about it, such as the GitHub repository.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in putting together this display, there's topics around the Amazon, around water temperature, around ice, and it's a really interesting way to access information, but it's also a lot of really heavy information because what we're seeing is not encouraging on the whole. So I'm curious to know about like bringing together all of this information. What was it like to kind of bring it all together and synthesize it, and what did you make of it?
That's a really good point. I mean, Open Access Week this year, of course, is focused on climate justice. So we did want to mostly have environmental related information here. And some of it is particularly heavy, as you mentioned. You're talking about malnutrition, poverty in different areas. But at the same time, it's a chance to learn some kind of information that you might not come across otherwise. So you can take these important things, but you can also mix them with things like we have facts about consumption of orange juice in heavy snowfall. And so you might not necessarily think of that in response to climate justice, but when you're reading these questions and you get these different facts, your brain sort of puts them together in ways that can make an interesting story. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's difficult, but hopefully it comes away as being something kind of creative.
Yeah. And so, Josh, your role in the library, your responsibilities towards digital scholarship, and I think part of that is also working with faculty and grad students. And so we heard from our colleagues at Open Science about best practices, but as a librarian, as an information professional, what are some best practices that you can recommend?
I mean, I think a lot of things mirror what has been said, in the academic domain. Certainly, we are including some information literacy points within SEER. So as people are looking at these questions, we want people also to question the sources. What were the perspectives of the people that not only wrote and designed the questions, but that the research came from? And so hopefully in tracking that down, somebody that's using SEER will come across a site and think, well, who published this research? Why did they publish it? And how is this adding to the information that I need to understand here? Mm-hmm. So from a librarian perspective, we're trying to encourage that kind of critical thinking about the information that's being seen.
Excellent, great. Yeah. This is really exciting, and I think tomorrow it's going to be displayed.
A slightly more immersive version, yeah, in the visualization studio upstairs on the 3rd floor within the library. So there'll be a large version of this on the display wall with immersive audio and multi-touch, so that you can kind of play with some of these question portals in a different way, in a more engaging way.
Great. Do you want to tell us more about the Viz Studio? Some of our colleagues might not know about it.
Certainly, yeah. So it's a space within the library for encouraging more immersive scholarship type activities. It's a large format display wall, and there is an immersive spatial audio system that enables faculty and students, all students, undergrads and graduate students, to engage with their research, whether it's based in data or media, so to engage with it in different ways, and then put it into a format that they can communicate in different ways, sort of in slightly more immersive context.
No, that's really exciting. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I think it's game time with our colleagues at Climate Jeopardy. So hi, everyone. Do you want to tell us about this project and what we can learn from you?
Yeah, sure. Just before we get into that, I just want to say that we are members of the Climate Emergency Committee. We're a group of students and faculty who have come together around 2019 to basically do something about the climate crisis. We are under the geography department, and we do believe it's our responsibility to, be the lead in that sense. So ever since 2019, we've done different things such as like tree planting. We've sent letters to high schools and colleges across Quebec. We have also created the Fly Less policy, which was an initiative we created to encourage professors to decide and choose when they want to fly and go to different conferences and be really intentional with their trips. And one of the other things we've done is create this game called Climate Jeopardy, which Alex will introduce.
Yeah, so when we sent letters out to all the schools in Quebec, we said that we urged them to have more climate science in the curriculum and just about the climate crisis in general. And so one of the things we offered was that we would provide some sort of resource for them. And so we developed this interactive game show called Climate Jeopardy, loosely based on Jeopardy, so please don't criticize our lack of Jeopardy rules. And what it is a PowerPoint that we made. It's saying it's just a PowerPoint makes it seem like a bit boring, but it means that every teacher could use it because pretty much every teacher has access to PowerPoint. And so the way it works is we divide people up into teams in the classroom, and then with their team, they pick a subject. So there's 5 subjects at the top: climate science, impacts on nature, impacts on humans, personal solutions, and system solutions. And then they would choose a point value. For showing it off, today we put the subjects for each question, but usually it's the points. So from 100 to 500, and then they compete for about an hour and learn during the game. And what's great about it is that we've, as a group, as a climate emergency committee, we wrote little essays based on peer-reviewed science when we could. There's still some work to do on that, but eventually all of it will be sourced with little essays so the educator could know how to give them a resource to be able to teach it and be well informed about all these different subjects because of how multifaceted this issue is. And so just to run it as an example, will you please pick a subject? Well,
Sure, I will take personal solutions cars.
Personal solutions for cars. So then what happens next is, usually this would be for 200 points, and then we read out the question: what is the only situation where electric vehicles emit more greenhouse gas emissions than the equivalent gas-powered vehicle? And then there's a little click here, and the Jeopardy music goes, and the team has 30 seconds, and you can see the yellow bars slowly disappearing. So they would discuss within their team, and then after the 30 seconds, the timer music goes off, the yellow bars are gone, and then they have to give the answer to their question. What?
30 seconds could be a long time.
Yeah.
What is the only situation where electric vehicles emit more greenhouse gas emission than the equivalent gas-powered vehicle? I feel like this is a trick question of some kind.
We try not to do trick questions.
Then maybe it's not a trick question. I actually don't have an answer for this.
Okay. So no 200 points for you.
So I'll do another one.
So an EV is only more carbon intensive if the car's main charging station is powered by a coal power plant. Any other reason, which is another reason to convert to renewables more quickly. So with this little diagram we have here, this is the emissions of an electric car at the top, so that red bar, over its lifespan, and then a gasoline car at the bottom. So the red bar here, the top red bar, is when with 80% non-renewable energy. So even with 80% non-renewable energy, you have less carbon emissions by the end of the lifespan of the car. But out of the gate, an electric car actually has more carbon emissions than a gasoline car, and that's because of the battery. The battery actually takes up almost doubles the manufacturing emissions, but then over the lifespan of the car, obviously if you're not burning gas all the time, it's not gonna emit as many greenhouse gases. But you could see the second bar in the middle, that's on renewable energy. So it's almost a quarter or about a third of the emissions of a gasoline car. And that's not considering, of course, the air pollution that gasoline cars cause locally, which reduces the lifespan and causes asthma, among other things. So EVs, of course, they're a partial solution. Car culture is also an issue. We shouldn't be using cars as often as we do. We should be promoting public transit, active transportation. That'll reduce traffic and make everybody's lifestyle more healthy. But of course, EVs, as we've seen, they've grown a lot in the past few years, and Canada will not sell any gas-powered vehicles after 2035, and a lot of other countries have committed to this as well, which is great news for the climate emergency. So that's basically the gist of the little essay we have written here, which is sourced and then has resources for the educator as well. And then there's also a whole background section, which is a bit more extensive, so that if the educator gets any questions, they could easily answer them and have a bit more knowledge than just the little blurb that they say to the students right away.
I think we have time for another question.
Great.
Let's do impacts on humans, Justice 1.
Justice 1. So this is for 200 points, so it's a true or false. The effects of climate change are felt evenly across the world.
I think that is false. And I'm going to say that even though the 30 seconds have.
Yeah, you don't need 30 seconds for that one. Of course, it is false. And this is an opportunity to talk for the educator to talk about climate justice. So the effects of climate change are not felt evenly across the world. And then we have a pretty complicated diagram there of North America, but you could see how all these different symbols and everything shows that the effects are quite different all over just North America itself. The southeast, like Florida and the coast there, will face flooding and storm surges. All of the east is supposed to get more precipitation, while the west is supposed to get less, and then you have little fire symbols. And then, of course, if we go at a global scale, the effects are very different depending on the local geography. So drought, agriculture is going to be affected differently. Some places will have higher yields, some places will have lower. Most of the bread baskets in the world will have lower. So again, it's just the teacher, the educator is able to turn this into whatever teaching moment they want, but we have these resources where we have little blurbs, and that's the game basically. And by the end, usually we encourage them to have prizes because the students, especially younger students, go wild when there's prizes, and like everybody gets really focused. And they always have a blast when we've done in about 25 classrooms so far, and we get great feedback. We just have to get the resources to actually finish all the little essays. It's like 80% done. And we hope to next year follow up our later this year, well in 2023, to follow up our letter that we sent in 2019 to all the schools with a letter pointing them to this resource among other resources that we developed. Jay will just talk briefly about the other one.
Okay, so another thing that we created is this website called Planet Earth for Everyone. It's a website that two of my other colleagues and I created, basically to also like share climate science to people of like advanced high school, I would say, those who really are interested in this, but definitely more college and definitely way more university level, and just a way to have all this knowledge shared to the public, because I feel like a lot of it could get confusing and there's a lot of layers in the end. So we tried to make it more straightforward. We go into like the hydrosphere, lithosphere, the biosphere as well. And we just have a lot of videos and photos and really trying to break down the different ways into how the world works, honestly. So.
Thanks, Jay. So again, we're the Climate Emergency Committee. If anybody's interested, we have pamphlets here. We have to join our mailing list, there's a little QR code. We have other projects in the works too, and we just need more people to come join us and help us work on them.
So you're based in geography, but open to anyone from the community?
Yeah, absolutely. We have people from poli-sci, from translate linguistics as well. They're working on translating climate Jeopardy. So obviously in Quebec, most of the schools are French. So to give that resource to French schools as well.
So this is a really important activity and an important cause, obviously. I guess my question is how did the two of you, as probably some of the younger people in the room, feel about what's your level of optimism or pessimism about how this can go?
So that's something I've worked on personally for a while, because I was doing these in the classrooms and I kept cornering myself of like, I hadn't developed my own optimism about this. Obviously, it's hard to be optimistic about something so sort of intangible and multifaceted and scary. But at the same time, if there's definitely a positive outlook, and that's part of the outro to the game that I've been working on hard lately, is like framing things like there is reason to still have hope, and we have to have hope because that's how we make progress. Otherwise it's paralyzing, because last thing we want to do is create more climate anxiety and eco anxiety with this product. So focusing on the solutions especially, but I mean, I'm positive in that if you look at just in the past 10 years, so much has changed. Renewables are cheaper than non-renewable energy. The solar power has gone up by, I think, like 15 times what it was like 20 years ago. And then electric cars, but also just the conversations, right? Like if any of the political debates, like during the provincial elections or even the federal elections, 10 years ago, environment was like a 5-minute thing. And now it was like much more spoken about, and everybody has plans related to it, or at least most of the good parties do. All the good parties do. And so yeah, so it's definitely something that's difficult to express, but from what I've learned, it's just about focusing on the solutions and focusing on the progress that we have made. Like the 1.5 sting at below 1.5 degrees, like that's like best case scenario, and that we're probably not going to make that. but that doesn't mean we can't still improve and save plenty of livelihoods and make things better in the future. So it's important to keep the hope going and for everybody to be knowledgeable about the solutions so that they could talk to other people and contribute to changing culture into a culture that's more respectful of the environment in general.
Do you want to add anything?
No, you kind of said it all. Like you really took, I guess, showed us how like it's so easy to be very pessimistic about the way the world's going, but there is a lot to be hopeful about. And the way like I like to look at it is just like you said, we are going to likely hit the 1.5, but it's like how else can we do to not make it be as bad as it is? It's like, you know, if you're gonna fall, you could put your arms out to stop from hitting your head. You know, so that's the way I like to look at it, and I am very hopeful in a sense. I'm a pessimistic, but I'm also very hopeful because I do see how the world is becoming more climate aware, and that brings me hope about what our generation could do and also future generations, and how they could have basically the environment be the forefront of their decisions and ideas rather than it being like a last thing you think about.
Amazing, thanks very much. So I neglected to talk to my colleague Alex Gandon, who's our data librarian and who's sitting right over yonder. So I'm going to bring the show over to Alex, who is our data expert, and ask him to talk about some work that he's doing and some trends in data librarianship and data management in terms of making things open and accessible.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I thought I would escape without this, but no, I'm glad to talk about open data. Yeah, I've been a data librarian for maybe, I would say around 15 years now. And over that period of time, things have changed tremendously on the data front, specifically regarding open data. We have made great strides. It's a different world than it was just 15 years ago. There's much more that's open out there in terms of government-provided data, but also a lot of different agencies, and also from academia itself. The movement, like what we call research data management, the new realization that we need in academia to make not only the output of our research, the articles, open and available in open journals, but also the underlying data. My friends in open science alluded to that, but that's something that changed relatively recently. In Canada, we're a bit behind certain other English-speaking countries, but we are making great progress too. There are the governments, the funding agencies, the granting agencies are having more and more requirements for people to publish things like data management plans or even making their data available. So all of that is good, but since the theme of this year is climate justice, I did a little bit of research when creating my PowerPoint presentation for today. And it's a bit eye-opening to see that, yes, open data is more and more available, certainly in the most developed countries, but where the impact of climate change is likely to be the greatest in less developed nations, it's also, unfortunately, where there is usually less data available for all kinds of economic and political, socio-political reasons. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. And even here in more industrialized nation or more advanced nations, we're still working too much in silos. Governments and academia need to work more together. We need to find a way to convince businesses to be part of the game too, because obviously they generate, as we all know, they generate a lot of data or gather a lot of data, but they need to make the data also, as you know, I'm not naive. I know that it's not in their business plan to make the data that they gather normally completely open, but they can certainly, under certain circumstances, be part of the game and make some of the data available under certain conditions. So yeah, that's pretty
So-
much what I have to say about data.
Thank you, Alex. So a question that I used with our colleagues in the open science group, but I'll ask you. So what are one or two or three things that a researcher or grad student who works in data, works with data, what are some best practices that they can use to make their data open or more open if it's sensitive or there's some proprietary concerns?
There's tons of things that they can do. Some of the things are relatively easy, some are much more time intensive and would require much more work. Well, first of all, they should document, and that's speaking like a true librarian, but they should document their data. And that's just even short of making it widely available. If you work as part of a large research groups, it will help everyone if your data within your team, if your data is well documented, if you have things like a data dictionary documenting every variable, if you explain what instruments you're using, if your code is well maintained and is shared. So that's something that if you start from the beginning, and that's maybe the biggest point actually, I think that research data management is much easier if you think about it from the very beginning, even before you start gathering data. And that's why creating what we call a data management plan is so important. A data management plan is just like a document that's a few pages long that describes what kind of data you're going to gather and how you plan to share it, and is it going to be restricted? Are there any sensitivity issues related to that? But if you do that, if you go through the exercise of creating a data management plan as you begin your research project, I think maybe 50% of the work in order of adopting good data management practices will be done. Everything will be much easier after that.
And in terms of depositing your data, are there recommendations around platforms, repositories?
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, we at Concordia, we're part of a pan-Canadian data repository that has just changed its name to Borealis. It's based on a platform called Dataverse, and it accepts all kinds of data. It's completely open. We are there. We have a small team of librarians in the library that are there to help faculty to deposit their data. We'll do some checks. We'll make sure that the files are what they're supposed to be. We'll quickly look at the metadata and things like that. But that's only one. Dataverse or Borealis is only one possibility. Very often, depending on what fields, what subject area researchers are with, there will be subject-specific platforms that can be used. For instance, on social sciences, a great repository is called ICPSR at the University of Michigan. And then in biology and genomics, there's tons of subject-specific platforms too. So there's no shortage of places. It's more a question of planning in order to make your data available, because there needs to be planning, there needs to be documentation. When you work with human participants, you need to make sure that when they sign the word escapes me, but the agreement that you sign with your research participants, your human participants, they need to agree that the data will be shared, maybe under certain conditions or maybe completely openly. But all of that brings me back to the point of think ahead, and that's some of the things that you need to plan at the beginning of your research.
Amazing, thanks. And Alex, you're a resource for the entire Concordia community? Is that?
I am. I'm not the only person, fortunately. The good thing is that, as I've said earlier, I think in Canada we may be a bit behind other English-speaking countries. The good thing is that we've been able to learn from what other people have been doing in other places. And so we're building from the ground up slowly, but there are more and more requests. I have more and more requests from faculty and students, so that's keeping me a bit busy. But what's very good, I'm amazed. I'm discovering myself some of the groups here that I was not aware of. So obviously there is a growing community of people interested in open science and open data. So this is an extremely positive sign. Yeah.
Amazing, great, thank you. So I gave the first word to Rachel, and I'll give the last word to Rachel. If there's anything that we missed, we didn't talk about, if there's anything that she wants to add or give some concluding remarks.
Thank you so much. So in getting the privilege to look around this room, one of the wonderful things in this space is a bringing together of different disciplines where, say, I'm an art historian as well, and at an art history conference, you're going to find other people in your discipline, same in biology, etc. But in this space, we have people from geography, from biology, from psychology, from information studies, all coming together into a space where different aspects of open access, open source, open data are finding dialogue with these big questions about what are we going to do with climate change? How can we arrive at a space of climate justice given all of the inequities that exist within the world? So thank you so much for coming into this space and contributing to this across disciplines fair.
Thanks, Rachel. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out and for your participation. Thank you for those who were here in person and watching online. And thanks once again to our colleagues at Fourth Space.